and welcome to this special edition of Frankly Speaking. And joining me tonight is Sadhguru ji, the one and only Sadhguru ji, who's on a 10,000 kilometer trip in the United States on a motorcycle, and he's calling this and he's all right, 10,000 miles, and he's calling this a mystic trip. Welcome to Frankly Speaking, Sadhguru ji. Namaskaram. And I want to ask you, you're on this 10-mile trip and calling it mystic. What mystic values are you in search of?
Essentially, we're calling this Exploring Spiritual America. This has been on our agenda for quite some time. You know, almost 17, 18 years ago, there was a very profound experience when I was in Tennessee, in Cookeville area, where I experienced certain dimensions of Native American spiritual existence. Since then, I've been thinking of exploring this off and on. We've forayed a little bit, but this is a time, you know, our schedules have been such that we've never been able to do that. But this is the time, because I've been here for more than 2 months now, so we decided to take this trip. And this is taking us across about 17 or 18 states across United States, covering maybe a little over 10,000 miles, as you said. When we say spirituality…
Sadhguru ji, we're used to seeing you as a traditional Sadhguru teaching us about spiritualism, and right now we are seeing Sadhguru ji on a bike, on a BMW bike, and he's talking about spiritualism, wearing shades and denims. What is this new avatar, and what's the connection between bikes and spiritualism?
Nothing, no new avatar. Always when I ride, I'm dressed the way it's appropriate, not just for riding. I'm appropriate to any given situation, that's all, because with life, it is all about appropriateness. Only fools believe there is some absolute right and wrong. Otherwise, it's only a question of appropriateness and inclusiveness. So this is not about any particular way of doing things. It is just that, see, these are oral traditions. For example, the Native American traditions are largely oral traditions. India itself has been, to some extent, an oral tradition, but we also developed a phenomenal amount of literature in variety of languages, but these are purely oral traditions. Having said that, see, when we say history, unfortunately, we have taken to this mode of history means you write terrible events of, you know, whatever this year this war happened, that year that war happened, this is all history we're reading about. In my simple way of understanding life, his story means his story and her story should have happened, all right? But there is no what was happening in people's lives, what was happening in people's minds, what was their experience. This is never recorded in the so-called modern history. It's a terrible old, you know, accumulation of old newspapers, that's what it is. But in India, we always wrote history. For example, our Mahabharata, our Ramayana are a historical record of what was happening in people's minds and hearts, what drove them, what made them do things that they did. So in that context, always I'm interested in feeling out the spirit of what's happened in a culture rather than the dates of what happened. As you know that most of the time the Native American people always talk about it's blowing in the wind. So because it's blowing in the wind, I thought, let me ride on a motorcycle, so I don't want to miss the wind in the cubicle of a car. So I'm on a motorcycle, so naturally I have to dress appropriately for that.
So Sadhguru ji, I want to ask you, I think spiritualism is something that probably our culture in India seems to have really distanced itself, at least from the churn that we are seeing in the society. There is a manthan that is going on, and I want to bring up to you events that happened over the last 3 months, which have created a huge amount of churn in our society. And I begin with Bollywood because here we are seeing a churn that is engaging the rest of the country in a huge debate. And I want to ask you, there is the death of a 34-year-old actor, which was earlier called suicide. Now it's looking more and more like homicide. The final report will be out sooner than later. But there is a whole amount of linkages to the drug culture, to the questions that have been raised on nepotism and drug culture and camps, and how these have impacted newcomers into the industry. And in the middle of this, there is a character called Kangana Ranaut, who is a well-known actor, has been through the odds, but today has taken a position, and virtually the world has turned against her. How do you see this entire manthan, especially with respect to Kangana on one end and the rest of Bollywood on the other?
I really do not know the dynamics of what happens in that cinema world, and generally I refuse to use that word that you're using, which sounds like Hollywood because I think creative world, people who claim to be a creative world should never be such, copycats in such a basic way that because there is a Hollywood, you call yourself something else. Leaving that aside, I really do not know the dynamics of that. And I feel, as far as I know, because I'm not following up the news very actively, premier investigation agencies are engaged. I think all of us should wait for them to, without obstructing their process, we should wait without making too many predictions and anticipation of what should happen, what should not happen. We should wait for the investigation to be complete, and I'm sure they will deliver, and then the courts will deliver justice. I only hope it doesn't take too long.
But Sadhguruji, Kangana has come out. She's a woman and at the moment seems like a lone ranger. Yes, people have come forward to support her, but there are a whole lot of critics, starting from senior members of the film industry, of the creative world, who have come out and said that what she's saying about this industry is actually in Hindi they say thali mein ched karne jaisa hai, whereas Kangana has been made the target of even government action, where a demolition of her house with a 24-hour notice has taken place by the MCD, which even the Bombay High Court has called malafide. Do you see this as a war that we often call in Mahabharat, the war between the good and the evil, the right or the wrong, or do you think too much is being made out of it?
This is why we have been constantly talking about this, and a lot of people don't realize the significance. Till something goes wrong with themselves or something that is dear to them or in somebody else's life who are dear to them, the most important aspect of nation building is to make it a law-abiding nation. When we say a law-abiding nation, we don't always go about talking what is right and wrong. Many times the law, you may end up on the wrong side of the law, but you may think you're very right. So it's important that we become law-abiding. It may not feel like justice many times, but still we are law-abiding, because being law-abiding means a larger justice will happen to the society as a whole. It doesn't matter where you're placed, whether you're capable, incapable, whether you're rich or poor. When the society becomes law-abiding, not in terms of personal justice, but there will be a balance in the society. I think if there is any laws being broken, either by the administration or either by the people, or it doesn't matter who they are. First of all, why do we have to think that somebody is a celebrity, somebody is an ordinary person? That is only a social status. As far as the constitution is concerned, as far as the nation is concerned, when we become a law-abiding nation, we don't even have to think whether somebody is a celebrity or not. Law is law and it must work equally for everybody else. It does not work that way simply because we still have this thing about who is important, who is not important, for who the law should work, for whom it should not work. This has to go. It's a long way, but still this is a good time for all of us to understand and act. Above all, a young person's life has been lost. justice should happen to them. Everybody should know what is the truth. I hope the investigating agencies will come out with the right solutions for that.
So Sadhguruji, a lot of people are talking about the prevalence of drugs in film industry, as it is in many other walks of the world. But the film industry comes under a lens simply because these are celebrities that we are dealing with. Whether we like it or not, they are more visible to the common man. They do turn up to be icons. They do turn up to be very, very visible in media, in the films that they perform in, and in some way or the other, they become icons and idols that the common man really follows. Now, I want to ask you, of course, not all of them will be part of the so-called drug usage racket. But many people are now coming out and saying that, you know, what's the big deal about marijuana? Many countries have made this legal. Where do you think India as a society fits into this debate? Are we mature enough as a society to have drugs legally available for consumption, whatever the quantities may be specified? Are we a country where we can be open about this and the law enforcement agencies don't harass people? Where do you stand on?
Well, that is a much bigger debate, but in India, you know, traditionally these things have been available, but usually never people went for it. It used to be a very small segment of people who would go for it. But now that it is being spread as a fad, as if it's a solution for life, it is going everywhere. I must tell you this, I was in Bangalore addressing under 25 conferences, young people gathering, and it was an open area and more than 25,000 people there, and I could smell marijuana in the air. And then one of the questions they asked me, Sadhguru, you have so much influence in the country, you can talk to the government, why don't you make marijuana legal? I said, why just marijuana? Let's make cocaine also legal, let's make meth also legal, because you will anyway come in installments. Initially there was a prohibition, then you said, why don't we make alcohol legal? Now you're saying marijuana legal. Of course the cocaine people will say cocaine legal, meth people will say meth legal, ecstasy people will say ecstasy legal. Why don't we make everything legal? We can make it. So I asked them, what is it? You want to go to the university smoked up? They said, why not? I said, do one thing, I will take you on a small plane ride, a pilot will come and take you on a ride. And he comes and you see him smoked up, would you like to fly with him? They said, like that. I said, okay, you're not getting it. Let's say you need a major surgery, and you see your surgeon comes and he's all smoked up. Would you want a surgery? Oh, no. So you understand this, that your faculties are lowered with these drugs. So lowering your faculties, unfortunately you're calling it high. Please, at least from now on you say, I go low. Don't say I'm on high. You're not high, you're going low and thinking you're high, this is your problem. So human ability to experience life is enhanced by heightening your perception, by heightening your faculties, not by lowering your faculties. Anything that lowers human faculty, whether it is drug or alcohol or marijuana, whatever, is it a thing to pursue? No. It is for those people who have given up on life. It is for those people who do not value life, they want to lower it. Well, I want to remind you, you will be lowered one day into your grave, don't hurry it up. The question is not about whether you will die if you smoke or not, that's not the point. Right now when you're alive, if you lower your faculties, in some way your life is down. So don't try to put down your life, especially the youth and those who are in some way icons in the world, either because of cinema or cricket or sport or whatever else. When people are looking up to you, it is important that you set the right example, because in this you will be doing a great service just the way you exist. When it can transform millions of lives, just the way you are, when you can influence positively millions of young lives, I think you should take that responsibility seriously, whoever you are.
So, Sadhguruji, I want to ask you, on the one hand, there is a lone woman, Kangana Ranaut, who's standing up for something. Many people say, oh, you know, it's politically motivated, it is something that's being done for publicity. But the question here is, it has gone after her. She has been called names, and I can't even repeat them. She called it and interpreted it as Muft Khor, but you know, people in the ruling party, Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament Sanjay Raut called her by a certain name. They said, you know, muh tod denge, and if she comes to Mumbai, she will have to suffer. And they say she's provoked people because she's called Mumbai as Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and the editorial of Samna on the front page said ukhad diya when her house was broken down. Do you think it's befitting to A, translate everything into a slugfest which is political, and B, what do you think about feminism? Because the last time you expressed your own views on feminism, I think social media didn't even they didn't even give you any space. They trolled you. Do you think this is showbiz, this is publicity, or do you think there is a manthan in process?
See, unfortunately, in today's world, it's become like this, that people think they have a right to abuse other people. Right to speech is one thing, expressing yourself is one thing. Abusing somebody is a different thing. If we do not draw this distinction, I'm telling you, what you're losing out is your civilization. You're just losing out your civilization. When we were growing up, the words that are being publicly used today just about everywhere, including the social media, everybody is calling everybody all kinds of things. If somebody said such a word, people would say, these people lack civilization. Well, I don't know whether it's a lack of civilization or there's an evolutionary problem there, but it is getting there very soon that anybody thinks they can abuse each other whichever way they want. I mean, it is not just on the street anymore. Right now I'm here in United States, within the family, husband and wife speak the same language, parents and children speak the same language. On the street side, the filth also speaks the same language. What is happening to us? This is going backward in civilization. In the name of freedom of speech, we are losing the fundamentals of what we have built over thousands of years of a cultivated behavior, of a cultivated language. Languages are so complex. To use language properly itself is civilization, one important part of that. Just using whatever comes to you, especially addressing women whichever way you feel like, I think it's lack of civilization and they're showing it. It is time that if we do not learn by our own consciousness, then probably laws have to come. What are the words you can use and cannot use? It has to come because it is not today, I'm saying it is not about something. People who do not even know you, people you have never met in your life are using abusive language. This is not new to me. For last 25, 30 years, endlessly, people are heaping all kinds of choicest abusive languages upon me. For what? I don't even know for what. I hope they know for what. So unfortunately, this is happening and they think it's fashionable to abuse each other. There is nothing fashionable, you just lack civilization, but I'm beginning to have doubts it may be an evolutionary issue within you.
Sadhguruji, while Kangana has taken one position, there is another part, and I think our country has been divided into two segments, and these have become very, very loose definitions where most people are falling into these brackets. The right-wingers are loosely spoken, supporters of Modi, and anybody who either appreciates Modi or talks about a little bit of the right-wing logic or ideology, then they are all clubbed together as bhakts, and therefore they are not serious, they are uneducated, and they just are blind. and on the other side are the so-called liberals. And these liberals are opposers of Modi. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but that's how the definitions have begun. So if Kangana Ranaut praises Modi and says something about somebody else, then she's a right-winger and she has to be abused by the opposition party. So politics enters into your viewpoints as well on something which is about drugs or a murder. And on the other side, you have these so-called liberals who will then attack a woman like Kangana and then will attack through Kangana the Prime Minister. It's reached certain absurd levels.
Spirituality is not to be misunderstood as organized religion. This is not about dividing the society into what I believe and what you believe. This is about life. Life is happening as one happening. You and me as people may be happening as two different people, but life is happening as one happening. Right now, there is a severe indict about the humanity itself. The recent Living Planet reports that have come are talking about nearly 70% of the vertebrates have been decimated in the last 50 years. 1 million species are under threat. I'm saying we're pulling out the foundation stones of our existence. And what are we fighting about? Let's fix this.
Yes, Sadhguruji, we really need to look deep within ourselves and not outside. We need to look for peace and not to be at war with each other. Well, we hope as a society we can at least make a beginning somewhere rather than only living in a world of abuse and vitriol. Thank you very much, Sadhguruji. Namaskaram.